Hi, my name is Kelsey, and I'll be responding to the compassion fatigue discussion. The first section of the discussion talks about secondary traumatization and compassion fatigue as a result of empathetic engagement with another's trauma and how it affects social workers. Like anybody knows, if you've ever done anything to help somebody, sometimes it can become overwhelming, but most of the time that kind of task or whatever it is that you're using to help somebody ends really quickly, but social workers do it every day as a job. So, of course, some jobs are more stressful than others, but no matter how stressful your job is, if you're under a constant amount of stress and do not practice adequate self care, more than likely you're going to experience compassion fatigue to some kind of degree. Um, in my undergraduate degree, something that we discussed all the time was burnout. And the way that we talked about burnout very much reminds me of compassion fatigue as well. Some of the some of the ways that you can tell if you're suffering from compassion fatigue has a lot to do with how you are sleeping, how you're able to cope with your work, with any kind of stress related or anxiety disorder, if you're experiencing, like I said, restlessness or any kind of somatic symptoms, which includes sleep, but as well as being able to not being able to stay well, feeling sick, um, if you are having emotional distress, like lashing out at others, if you feel like you find yourself isolating yourself, just because sometimes helping people all the time gets overwhelming, and if people are consistently asking you for things, you might feel as though you need to spend some time away from people in general. So, a lot of the symptoms of compassion fatigue very much resemble those of acute stress disorder. And of course, when you like think of burnout and just being exhausted and just not really having the time for yourself anymore. So, the main suggestion that I would have about, dealing with compassion fatigue if there was myself or somebody that I knew suffering from something like that, would absolutely be self-care. I watched a TED Talk that I will probably link on somebody's response or maybe even in this video, but I watched a TED Talk in which she suggested ways to get over compassion fatigue, or at least to kind of aid your recovery, and that one of the first things is just recognizing that you have it. Um, there is let me make sure that I'm saying the name right. There is a professional quality of life measurement, which again, I'll probably link in my description of the video. And this will tell you to what degree you are experiencing burnout or compassion fatigue or that kind of thing. And just having this kind of measurement, the first step to being able to fix anything, as cliche as it sounds, is just to know that it's something that you're struggling with. So I would suggest to myself or whoever might be suffering from compassion fatigue to first be able to look at the symptoms and take a self-assessment just to kind of make sure that they know that this is something that they're struggling with. Of course, with any kind of social work um, struggle like burnout, compassion fatigue, self-care is the most important thing. Um, Self-care can be done in many, many different ways. You can wake up 30 minutes early and if exercise is your thing, prayer, meditation, taking a time for yourself in the evening to read a book, whatever it is that kind of calms you down and gets you away from the world, is very beneficial when it comes to, spending time with yourself and getting to know yourself. Um, Something very interesting that I discovered when researching this topic was the idea of establishing boundaries. Um, Oftentimes, if compassion fatigue is very intense, it could also be because personal boundaries might not be what they should be. Meaning that you feel as though you can't say no to somebody. Um, this is something that I also like personally identified with my own life, is that it's hard for me to say no. If somebody wants help, I'm going to say yes, and oftentimes that does leave me overwhelmed. So I feel like establishing personal boundaries and knowing when you're able to say no is really important. So that's just a few things that I would suggest when it comes to overcoming compassion fatigue for myself or for anybody out there who might be struggling with it.